The hearing will come to order, and I want to apologize for being a bit late. We did have some votes on the floor, and the Nobel Peace Prize winner for 2006, Dr. Yumi was, or Professor Yumi was in, I was hosting him, and unfortunately went a little bit longer than it should have, so I apologize. Good afternoon, and welcome to this afternoon's hearing on the role of tier rankings in the fight against human trafficking. Many of you joining us this afternoon have been in this fight from the very beginning. From the year 2000, when my Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000 created not only the Office to Monitor and Combat Trafficking in Persons at the Department of State, but also the annual TIP report. At the time, I don't think anyone could have predicted that this report and the work that the office does would become the international gold standard and the primary means of anti-trafficking accountability around the world. From the halls of parliaments to police stations in remote corners of the world, this report is being used to focus anti-trafficking work in 186 countries on the key areas of prevention, prosecution, and protection. The fact that it has been so successful is a credit to the hard and careful work of the Office to Monitor and Combat Trafficking in Persons. Each year, this office evaluates whether the government of a country is fully complying with the minimum standards for the elimination of human trafficking, or if not, whether the government is making significant efforts to do so. The record is laid bare for the world to see and summarized in a tier ranking. Tier 1, countries fully meet the minimum standards. Tier 2 countries do not meet the minimum standards, but are making significant efforts to do so. Tier 3 countries do not meet the standards and are not making significant efforts to do so. Along with the embarrassment of being listed on Tier 3 countries are open to sanction by the United States government. Since the TIP report's inception, more than 100 countries have enacted anti-trafficking laws, and many countries have taken other steps required to significantly raise their tier rankings, citing the TIP report as a key factor in their increased anti-trafficking response. In the 2003 Trafficking in Persons Reauthorization Act, I and my colleagues in Congress created the Tier 2 watch list. This list was intended to encourage anti-trafficking progress in a country that took positive anti-trafficking steps late in the evaluation year, especially those countries that took last-minute measures to avoid a Tier 3 designation. We wanted to reward good faith efforts and to encourage them to continue. However, some countries made a habit of last-minute efforts and failed to follow through year after year, gaming the system. Consequently, in the 2008, Congress created an automatic downgrade for any country that had been on the Tier 2 watch list for 2 years, but had not taken significant efforts enough to go to Tier 2. The President can waive a Tier 3 downgrade for an additional 2 years if there is credible evidence that a country has a written and sufficiently resourced plan to meet the minimum standards. The automatic downgrade would protect the integrity of the tier system and ensure it worked properly to ensure real progress in the fight against human trafficking. It has now been 4 years since the 2-year limit, or 4 years with a waiver limit, was instituted. China, Russia, Uzbekistan, and the Republic of Congo, Iraq, and Azerbaijan have now had at least 4 full years of warning that they would face a downgrade to Tier 3 if they did not make significant efforts to prosecute traffickers, protect victims, and prevent trafficking. Now their time on the Tier 2 watch list is up. In this hearing today, and it's the first of a series, we will take a close look at the records of these countries in 2012. If these countries have once again failed to make significant efforts to meet the minimum standards, the State Department must downgrade them or risk undermining the credibility and demonstrated power of the TIP report. I'm particularly concerned about the government of China's record. The government of China has been on Tier 2 watch list for 8 consecutive years, in large part because its plan to fight human trafficking is inadequate, unevenly implemented, and the government of China has not been making significant efforts to comply with minimum standards. Law enforcement in China is still not trained to identify or respond properly to sex or labor trafficking victims. I've heard reports that local police are often unwilling to help parents find missing children who may have been enslaved in a local brick kiln, and that officials have been known to profit from brick kilns that exploit children. As we will hear from a brave trafficking survivor today, the government of China continues to forcibly repatriate North Korean trafficking victims who face severe punishment, including execution, upon their return to North Korea. I would note parenthetically that we've had several hearings in this subcommittee, and I've chaired them, where we've had victims tell that story. We've met with the High Commissioner for the UNHCR on the issue of sending them back, which obviously violates the Refugee Convention, and we've had no progress, none whatsoever, in that area. Moreover, the government of China's continued one-child-per-couple policy has absolutely decimated China's female population. Matter of fact, I mentioned yesterday when Secretary Kerry was here that there's a book by Mara Wiesenthal in which she points out that because of sex selection, abortion, and this gendercide that has occurred, in Asia, there are 160 million missing women and girls. That's across all of Asia, of course, India and China being the two leading. That not only is a crime of gender and a crime against humanity, because it is selecting those children out because they're girls, it also has become a huge magnet for human trafficking. Tens of millions of girls, as I said, are missing from the population of China alone, making China a magnet for sex and bride trafficking as men reach marrying age but cannot find a mate. One estimate puts it at from 37 million to as much as 50 million men who cannot find brides right now. And that will not change because the demographic nightmare has been in the process of being made since the one-child-per-couple of 1979. The government of China is not only failing to address its own trafficking problems, but is creating an incentive for human trafficking problems in the whole region. The government of Uzbekistan's record is also of great concern, as the government itself continues to force hundreds of thousands of school-aged children and adults to work in fields during the cotton harvest each year. The government of the People's Republic of Congo, despite making some progress in 2010 with the passage of a law that would prevent child trafficking, has failed in the last 2 years to convict a single person under the law, despite the pervasive child trafficking in their country. The government of Russia has had 9 years of warning, 9 years, without significant change. They, too, would be downgraded. I would note parenthetically that I wanted to go to Russia just a couple of months ago and was told I couldn't get a visa. Denied a visa. During the worst days of the Soviet Union, when I was going, along with Frank Wolf and others, into gulags, we got a visa. Couldn't get a visa just during the Lincoln Day, President's Day break. Denied a visa. I'm going to apply again. One of the top issues we were going to discuss was human trafficking. The government of Russia does not have in place a formal procedure for identification and referral of trafficking victims by law enforcement, labor inspectors, and other government officials. The government of Russia still has not established a government body to organize government anti-trafficking activities, nor does it adequately fund shelters or services for victims. Russian citizens are trafficked from Russia to countries all over the globe, as well as within Russia, and many are now coming in, particularly labor trafficking, into Russia, and the government does not have a national trafficking education or prevention plan. The government of Azerbaijan continues to see administrative fines for traffickers, allowing traffickers to write off the crime of trafficking as a simple business expense that is less expensive than hiring their workers. The government of Iraq has been on the watch list since the TIP report first began to hold them accountable in 2009. Like trafficking victims elsewhere in the world, the victims in Iraq need protection. Those who are vulnerable to trafficking need prevention measures, and traffickers need to be brought to justice. We will also be focusing on Vietnam, but the importance of accurate tier ratings cannot be overstated. Over the last 12 years, we have seen countries begin in earnest the hard work of reaching the minimum standards after the TIP report accurately exposed with a Tier 3 rating each country's failure to take significant action against human trafficking. I note parenthetically that great friends like Israel and South Korea were Tier 3 countries, and they moved mightily, not just to get off the list, but to clean up the egregious practices that were occurring within their countries. By the same token, a premature boost to Tier 2, such as what occurred in Vietnam last year, may not only undermine progress, but fail to inspire any kind of action. The tier rankings were meant to be, and in large part have become, a powerful tool in the fight against human trafficking. I look forward this afternoon to a candid discussion, and we do have assembled a great group of experts who are in the know to tell us their views, and hopefully the administration will be listening. I yield to Ms. Bass.
Well, thank you, Mr.